Coming up on Hoosier Sports Night, Indiana men's basketball went toe-to-toe with Syracuse. We've got the recap on the exhilarating game that went down in double overtime.
And the last of the fall sports have wrapped up their seasons. We have the recaps on football, men's soccer, and more. This is Hoosier Sports Night.
Hello and welcome to Hoosier Sports Night. I'm Riley Woodall.
And I'm Samantha Condra.
It was a night that pleased all college basketball fans. Indiana took on Syracuse in an instant classic. Down 16 points at halftime, Mike Woodson and the Hoosiers rallied all the way back to force overtime. After a missed opportunity by Christian Lander with 10 seconds left, the Hoosiers and Orange went into double overtime with the score tied at 97. Indiana would take a 4-point lead only to see Jimmy and Buddy Boeheim rally the Orange and hit clutch free throws to steal the win against the Hoosiers. Indiana drops to 6-1 with conference play set to begin this weekend in Simon Skjodt Assembly Hall against Nebraska. Tip-off is at 12 p.m. with doors opening at 10:30 a.m.
The men's basketball team has had a strong start to their season. Joining us in studio for this week's Hoosier Highlight to spotlight two exceptional players is IUS-TV sports reporter Noah DeLumpa. Noah?
Thanks, Samantha. I'm Noah DeLumpa, and this week for your Hoosier Highlight, we have two standout basketball players. Your Indiana men's basketball team took down the Marshall Thundering Herd this past Saturday, and they certainly couldn't have done it without the help of Trace Jackson Davis and Xavier Johnson, who are this week's Hoosier Highlight Athletes of the Week. Jackson Davis is becoming a household name, having another historic night in Saturday's game. The junior forward set a new Assembly Hall scoring record, putting up 43 points while making 75% of his field goals. He also made his presence known on the Hoosiers' defensive end, blocking 5 Thundering Herd shot attempts. Scoring nearly half of the Hoosiers' points makes TJD worthy of his second Hoosier Highlight honor. But even his contributions alone wouldn't have been enough without Xavier Johnson. Johnson had a key performance against Marshall, contributing a season-high 20 points on 7 of 12 shot attempts made. The senior guard was a huge factor in the Hoosiers' convincing win on all sides of the court, tallying 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and 5 steals. The two were a Hoosier highlight reel all game long, combining for 63 of Indiana's 90 total points. Teams better prepare for this dynamic duo as the Hoosiers develop into a strong force to beat in the always competitive Big Ten division. The Hoosiers did suffer their first loss of the season against Syracuse in a ridiculous double overtime effort, but Coach Woodson is sure to have his squad locked in for their next game. That's all for this week's Hoosier Highlight. Samantha, back to you.
Thanks, Noah. IU women's basketball suffered their first loss of the season when they headed down to the Bahamas for the Pink Flamingo Classic during Thanksgiving break. In their first game against Stanford, the Hoosiers struggled to see shots fall, going 32% from the field. But their greatest downfall of Stanford was being out-rebounded 59-38. Graduate student guard Allie Patberg led the way with 19 points, but only had 1 rebound. She was followed by fellow graduate student guard Nicole Cardano-Hillary, who had 18 points and 8 rebounds. But the Hoosiers did not leave the island without a win under their belt. They went on to narrowly defeat the University of Miami in their final game of the tournament, 53-51. Indiana led 32-26 going into halftime, but scoring runs kept Miami close. The Hurricanes' graduate student guard Kelsey Marshall recorded 20 points, while the Hoosiers' junior forward Mackenzie Holmes got her first double-double of the season, leading the way with 14 points and 11 rebounds. Indiana is now 5-1 on the season. They will tip off against NC State tonight at 7 p.m. Follow our beat reporters Audrey Hausberger and Brett Smith for all the updates.
The men's soccer team season came to a conclusion this past weekend with a loss in the NCAA tournament. Joining us in studio to highlight the team's season is our very own men's soccer beat reporter, Ta Lau. Ta?
Thanks, Riley. The quest for 9 will continue for another year, as this past weekend the Indiana men's soccer team came to an agonizing end for Hoosier fans. IU lost 3-2 in overtime at number 2 seed Washington in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. although junior forward Victor Becerra and sixth-year senior Spencer Glass each scored once to help put Indiana in front twice. Washington's Dylan Tevez completed his hat-trick to eliminate the Hoosiers. The team wraps up the campaign with a 15-6-1 record. The defeat marks its first trophyless season since 2017 and a second Sweet 16 exit in the past 3 seasons. Now shifting over to the overall stats from this past year, Victor Becerra makes it 3-3 for the team's Golden Boot Award with 8 goals. He also wraps up his Indiana career as the player with the highest points tally in the cream and crimson uniform for the 3rd consecutive season. Meanwhile, junior winger Herbert NLA takes home the most assists accolade with 6. He was a force all year on the attack, creating a lot of chances for IU. Although it was a season where Indiana's offense wasn't firing on all cylinders, the defense was at its peak for most of it. The 7-game shutout run stands as the second longest single-season clean sheet streak in program history. IU didn't concede for up to 725 minutes of play. In addition, junior shot stopper Roman Celentano was the first ever player to receive the Big Ten Goalkeeper of the Year award in back-to-back seasons. To conclude, redshirt junior center back Daniel Muni picked up the conference's Defender of the Year accolade. That's it for my coverage of the Indiana men's soccer team this year. Thank you for following along with all the content. Riley, back to you.
Thanks, Todd. The Indiana volleyball team wrapped up its season last weekend with a pair of road losses on top-tier teams. The first loss came against rival Purdue by a score of 3-1. The Hoosiers fought hard in 2 sets, but ultimately Purdue was too much. The Boilermakers overlooked the Hoosiers 16-6, which contributed to their win. Indiana finished their season with a road loss to Wisconsin, who won the Big Ten title this year. The Badgers dominated the team, especially on the front line, collecting 10 more blocks than Indiana and 14 more kills. The Hoosiers wrapped up their season with a record of 10-22 and a 4-6 record in the Big Ten Conference.
Coming up after the break, Will Trubshaw joins us in studio to break down what ended up being a disappointing season for IU.
And we'll give you the rundown on all of the upcoming IU athletic events. You're watching Hoosier Sports Night.
Welcome back to Hoosier Sports Night.
IU football season came to a bitter end this past weekend.
Our very own Will Trubshaw is here with the recap of the team's disheartening season. Will?
Thanks, Riley and Samantha. Well, Indiana football season was finally laid to rest Saturday. In a fitting end to an ugly 2-10 season, IU was blown out 44-7 by arch rival Purdue, with 4th-string walk-on quarterback Grant Gremmel getting the start. How did the Hoosiers fall so far? And what's next for Tom Allen's team? Take a look. Indiana football came into 2021 with the highest expectations ever for a program on the rise. Ranked in the preseason poll for just the 3rd time in program history, the Hoosiers were poised to build off the unprecedented success of their previous 2 seasons. 3 months later, Indiana hardly mustered a whimper as Purdue put the final nail in the coffin on a meager 2-10 campaign that saw the Hoosiers go winless in conference.
It's easy to kind of take a step back and think, oh, we're a good team now. We can chill a little bit, but it's exactly the opposite. You got to come even harder, and you got to prepare yourself and everybody around you even more to be good on Saturday.
After a season-opening loss to Iowa, the Hoosiers would win 2 of their next 3, dropping a close game with the Cincinnati Bearcats. But injuries, confusion, and a lack of cohesion resulted in blowout losses at home to Ohio State and Rutgers, and 8 straight to finish the season.
We just have slips here and there, and we just shoot ourselves in the foot, really. It's not what the other teams do to us, it's just what we do to ourselves.
With the season officially in the rearview mirror, Tom Allen made it crystal clear. Change is on the horizon.
And to me, there's a pruning process that I think needs to take place, in our program when you go through and you got a lot of guys because of all the extra year and everything. And I think that's going to be an important next step for us to get that right. And when you prune, you cut back in order to grow.
The pruning process is already underway, with 4 Hoosiers entering the transfer portal since the season ended, bringing the total to 11. And Allen acted swiftly in relieving offensive coordinator Nick Sheridan of his duties. It's clear the Hoosiers have a long laundry list of positions to replenish on the field and on the sidelines. How they fill those needs out will go a long way to determining if their previous success was more than a flash in the pan. In addition to losing wide receivers Miles Marshall and Cameron Buckley to the transfer portal, senior Ty Freifogel is officially out of eligibility. With seniors Micah McFadden and Peyton Hendershot seemingly headed for the exits as well, IU will look to its incoming recruiting class and the transfer portal to retool for next season. Samantha, back to you.
Thanks, Will. The men's cross-country team wrapped up their season on November 20th after competing in the NCAA Cross-Country National Championships. Senior Arjun Jha was the lone representative running for the Hoosiers. Jha finished his season with a time of 30 minutes and 55 seconds and came in 176th place. He caps off a successful season after finishing 6th in the Big Ten Championship and 9th in the NCAA Great Lakes Regional earlier this year. The men's and women's cross-country teams will now turn to the indoor track and field season. It starts on December 10th with the Hoosier Open.
Joining us now in studio with the Candy Stripe Calendar Report is IUS TV sports reporter Logan Toon. Logan, what's going on this week in Hoosier sports?
Thanks, Riley. In the next couple of days, Indiana Athletics has some really great contests to look forward to. The upcoming slate begins with a women's basketball barn burner tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The number 2 overall team in the country, the NC State Wolfpack, rolls into Bloomington to take on our very own number 6 overall Hoosiers. The women's team comes into this game with a great record of 5-1 on a 1-game winning streak. On the flip side, the NC State women's team also comes into the contest with a very respectable record of 6-1, winning their last 6 in a row since their Game 1 loss against the number 1 overall ranked South Carolina Gamecocks. This would be an awesome win for the Hoosiers if they could pull it out, considering the firepower on this Wolfpack team. On Friday afternoon at 2 p.m., the women's and men's swimming teams have Cincinnati coming into town. The men's team hopes to continue their outstanding undefeated season thus far and defeat their next challenge. The women's team hopes to do the same and continue their very impressive record of 4-1. Let's show the Bearcats what we got, Hoosiers. After a tough double overtime loss the other night against the Syracuse Orange, the Indiana Hoosiers men's basketball team looks for a bounce-back opportunity on Saturday at noon against their first Big Ten match of the season, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This team has a lot of fight in them, and I believe it will be on full display come Saturday afternoon. And coming up on Monday, the women's basketball team will have another home game, hosting Penn State for their first Big Ten opponent of the season. Tip-off will be at 6 p.m. And that's all for the upcoming schedule in Indiana Athletics. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Logan. And that's our show for the week. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at IUS TV Sports. For our production crew behind us, I'm Samantha Condra.
And I'm Riley Woodall. We'll see you next week.